Well, if you thought that the race itself couldn't be any more interesting from yesterday, how's about the developments after the race at Martinsville? Of course, the big news that came out today, there was a radio communication between Erik Jones' spotter and Erik Jones himself, giving orders to not pass Denny Hamlin in the closing laps. Keep in mind, Erik Jones, Denny Hamlin, they are teammates for one more race after this, and that will be before Erik Jones moves over to Richard Petty Motorsports next season. The other big investigation that we're going to be talking about today is the investigation into Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch's wreck on the last lap of the race yesterday. We'll dive into all that in just a moment here, but let's start out with the top story on Monday, and it's the radio communications between Erik Jones and his spotter. The big story here, Erik Jones' spotter, as Erik Jones was the faster car in that stage of the race, his spotter told him, do not pass Denny Hamlin. This is a spot, if he loses it, he is in such a tight battle for that championship spot that he could lose it by you passing him. Now, I would say there's a fine line. So here's the thing. If you've watched IndyCar before, now obviously this is NASCAR, but if you've watched IndyCar before, if you've watched Formula One before, and definitely it happens in NASCAR too, there's these things called team orders. This is to help out a teammate who is in a championship battle. Essentially, that teammate is supposed to pull over, or at least do whatever they can to help that teammate in the championship battle. It's essentially a team effort, which, you can like it, you can hate it, but at the end of the day, why do you have teammates if you're not going to have team orders? And the Penske way, keep in mind, Roger Penske's been on record before saying, I just want a Team Penske championship. Don't wreck each other doing it, but let's do what we can to make it happen that it is a Team Penske driver winning the championship. And I'm sure he'll be saying the same on Sunday. But here, again, and I've seen comments, I've seen many tweets, many comments about why this is so similar to the Michael Waltrip racing scandal that happened a few years ago, which involved an intentional spin by Clint Bowyer to try to help Martin Truex make the playoffs that year. This is not the same situation, but I will say there's a fine line between team orders and sabotage. This was probably about here. It was leaning more towards sabotage here. And here's why I say that. Again, you can say, well, if Hamlin had let Erik Jones go, he would have lost the championship. And that may very well be true, because then Harvick didn't have to race as aggressive with Kyle Busch in that closing stage. However, again, even if, regardless of what happened, it happened. Say the same wreck happened. Again, this leans to me a little bit toward sabotage. It leans just a little bit toward sabotage. Just because, again, Erik Jones was clearly the faster car. It wasn't necessarily, I believe, the final lap that this communication happened. I did not exactly read as to when this communication with Erik Jones and his spotter occurred. I would say things would be different. I would lean more toward the team order side of things. I would lean more toward that had Kevin Harvick been in the rearview mirror of Erik Jones and his spotter said, whatever you do, keep him behind you. I don't care how you do it. Just don't wreck him. Try to keep him behind you. If he's going to force the issue, don't get in the way of it. You are not in the championship battle. You have no right to interfere in that. But try to keep them behind you and help your teammate. That's different. That aspect of it is not the same as not passing your teammate. Again, it's the same, but it isn't. To me, that's, if they had said Kevin Harvick's behind you, you need to do what you can to keep him behind you, but don't wreck him and don't wreck yourself in the process. And if he's going to try to wreck you for it, just move aside. There's a difference there. There's a huge difference. And again, and it's not like Erik Jones was asked to spin out. It's absolutely not like he was asked to spin out to cause a wreck, to bring out a caution. This is different from the MWR thing. The radio communication, though, is troubling because, again, this, you can't just go on the radio and say, hey, don't pass your teammate, and the other thing is, for a while there, Erik Jones was battling for a ride. He just got a ride. Granted, he's not going to be his teammate next year. Personally, I don't get why Erik Jones is helping him, other than to go out on good terms with Joe Gibbs. I mean, personally, I would have just kept going and said, who cares? I'm not here next year. This is Christopher Bell's problem, not my problem. But anyway, should there be any penalties that... honestly, again, Harvick shot himself in the foot later in the race. So, does it warrant a penalty? I certainly think there are going to be fines. Possibly a suspension. If anything. I think, though, you can't alter the course of the playoffs in favor of Kevin Harvick just because of one incident. I just don't think you can do that. And I agree with some of the folks here. Now, yesterday I made a video and I was very adamant that the playoff system is good for NASCAR. There are flaws, but it is good. Now, again, but I think this kind of racing, this team-oriented, these team orders, this is all a matter of... this is all just caused by the fact of the playoffs. This is what this system brings, is constant team orders. Constant, we need to do whatever we can to be sure this is going to happen. The other thing is, I guess you can attribute as well, the manufacturers are just as responsible because Fords, again, keep in mind at Daytona and Talladega, Fords and Toyotas and Chevys, they're all told, don't help the other manufacturers. Do whatever you can to ensure your fellow manufacturer driver gets to victory lane. No exception. So, I think it's a combination of not just the playoffs, but it's also that, in a sense. But again, could more have been done, or could more be done? I don't think it warrants any suspensions. I don't think they should alter the course of the playoffs and say, we're going to remove Denny Hamlin, we're going to add Kevin Harvick in, or penalize Denny Hamlin points. Again, because there's no verification that their spotter said anything, but the chances are he was absolutely involved in this decision somehow. Or at least someone on the 11 team had to be involved in this decision. So technically they could be penalized, but I think, again, you alter the points, you lose exactly what you wanted with this system, was winner takes it all. If you take points away from Denny Hamlin. If you remove Denny Hamlin from the playoffs for Kevin Harvick, you're entering a whole new battle. You're entering possibly the most controversial championship war you've ever seen if you alter that. But ultimately, I think the spotter, if anything's going to happen, I think the spotter for the 20 should be suspended, possibly fined for that, possibly the same for the 11 team, but possibly just fine the spotter. Again, I think you got to treat this like you would late in a game or late in the season. You can't make a penalty that's going to alter the course of the championship battle. You just can't alter it. late in the game, if you see a pass interference, unless it's absolutely clear cut and blatant that it happened, and just, you watched it, you see there's just absolutely no choice but to call it. If it's, you don't call it unless it's going to alter the course of the game or alter the course of, the end result. And this, if you penalize them, it alters the course of the result. And it could essentially taint this championship, as if people don't believe it's tainted enough by the fact that Kevin Harvick is out. Again, Harvick shot himself in the foot. Now, if Harvick didn't wreck Kyle Busch and wreck himself in the process, and they had finished the same way they had run coming to the white flag, different story. Then you do need to make a very, very crucial decision as far as what do we do about this. Do we suspend someone? Do we remove someone? Do we add someone? Then I think we're talking, we need to make a substantial, a huge decision. Now on to the Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch incident. Of course, Kevin Harvick wrecking Kyle Busch is under review by the NASCAR officials, as Kevin Harvick came out of turn number 4. He deliberately turned up the track and spun Kyle Busch. There's no arguing that one. He absolutely did it. But again, and I go back to what I said earlier, this is a product of the system that you have created. I'm not saying it's not able to be penalized, but it's a product of the system you made. You can penalize it, but I don't see the reason why you would. Ben Rhodes did he's done the exact same thing the last 2 races. This was not coming to the white flag to determine whether or not you were going to Phoenix. What Ben Rhodes did was, you ran me up the track a couple times, incidental, on purpose, whatever it was. This was, you ran me up the track, I'm taking you out, I don't really give 2 shits what you're racing for. That's what Ben Rhodes did. Kevin Harvick in that final lap, what he did was, I need to get to this championship 4. Kyle Busch is the opponent. You know for a fact Kyle Busch was not going to let him by. Had he been close enough in turns 3 and 4 to make a move to the inside, Kyle Busch wouldn't have given him the room. One, because Kyle Busch is a true competitor at heart, and he's going to always try to finish as high up as he can on that running order. And number 2, because his teammate Denny Hamlin is the guy on that cut line. You knew for a fact he was not going to move over for Kevin Harvick. And number 3 as well, add to it, these two have history. They don't like each other. You can see all the photos you want on Google of them smiling, laughing, talking to each other like they're best friends. They're not. They hate each other. Okay, they have always hated each other. And I assume that the reason that they're so friendly with each other, if they are, is just because of the respect for what each other has accomplished. But make no mistake, they just don't like each other. Look at other YouTube videos on wrecks between those two. Trust me, there's a history there. And I also say as well, what if the roles were reversed? Kevin Harvick Kyle Busch 100% would dive bomb anybody into the corner to make a championship happen. He can whine, he can cry all he wants about, I would never do that. You absolutely would if your championship life depended on it. And you can bet anyone in the field would do the exact same thing. Joey Logano did it a few years ago with Martin Truex. But again, that's the difference. Ben Rhodes did this. This was not to get to the championship 4. Yes it was, but it wasn't desperation like, I'm just a matter of points out. I need this position and I can advance. This guy ran me up the track, and probably not on purpose. but he ran me up the track. I need to make something happen. So if you're going to investigate anybody, you should be investigating Ben Rhodes for what he's done the last few races. But obviously they're not going to do that. What they're going to do, though, again, I don't think you can penalize Kevin Harvick for this. You know, he did what he had to do, or what he felt he had to do to get around Kyle Busch, which failed. It failed. But he did what he needed to do to try to secure this championship and to ensure that his team was in the championship four where they felt they belonged. And again, I'm going to double down for those guys who said he shouldn't be there, or he should be there. You know, sorry. Essentially, 28-3. Again, you can argue you can't compare the sport to ball and stick sports. But this playoff system, again, these wrecks are all a product of the playoff system NASCAR has put in place. And again, I'm going to double down on what I said yesterday. I've watched some videos, I have seen some comments. People are saying, this is a product of the playoffs. This is why the playoffs need to be abolished. This is why, if you're the regular season champ, you should advance to the championship four no matter what happens in those rounds of the playoffs. And I hate to tell you, I disagree with it. Okay, are we going to concede, should the Patriots have conceded the year that the Falcons went up 28-3? Should Golden State, should Cleveland have conceded when they went up 3-1 in a series lead? Again, what makes NASCAR stand out from the rest is this playoff format. It makes them stand out from all other motorsports. Keep in mind, they have the longest season of most motorsports. You have to have something here to readjust. Maybe they do go back to the old chase system. I highly doubt it. But, again, I think this is what sets them out from the rest. In that it doesn't reward consistency. You could have a bad round. Again, what Kevin Harvick did is very similar to a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl. It's very similar to what a 3-1 lead in a series is. He blew a 67-point lead. And you can say whatever you want. He blew a 67-point lead. He was not a product of the failed playoff system. He was a product of he blew a lead that he had. And again, I'm going to defend this probably all week. We'll see what happens. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a Chase Elliott fan. Heck, in the old system, he wouldn't have deserved to be in the championship battle. He's had an up and down year. But again, this is the system that it is now, unfortunately. So you're just going to have to adjust to it here. Alright, we want to thank you guys for watching. We've gone on long enough about all of this. Be sure to like or dislike. I'm not going to do the thing. I'm not going to put a thumbs up or a thumbs down this time. I've been failing miserably at that the last few weeks. So please like or dislike, subscribe. Also follow our friends on Heartland Spirit. I'm sure they will have some discussions on the Championship 4. Maybe what's being investigated right now. Just check out their channel. They may have something on their Canteen podcast, which airs on Friday nights at 6:15 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern on Spotify. So again, be sure to tune in to that. SCN and Heartland Media, we are covering what others don't. And until we see you next time, goodbye everyone.